No one else is going to do it for you. You got to get out of the house. You got to get some momentum. You got to find your way. And you only get that by getting out there and trying things out and screwing things up and doing your own hard work. People spend too much time in their life looking for their one thing, my purpose. So your purpose is a moving target, right? It changes. Every chapter there's a new purpose. And I say it's easy because when you're 20 and you're chasing girls and you're trying to find out what you want to do with your life, or when you're 65 and you got grandkids, those are very different, right?
What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode, and we got a special guest for you guys today. Obviously, I'm here with my brother Danny.
What's going on, everyone?
You know, you guys have heard me say before that I forget to say like and subscribe and do all that stuff. The team gives me crap for it, and I think I need you guys to like and subscribe.
Guys, hit that follow button. Come on.
The algorithm is getting harder and harder to crack, and today we're going to crack it. It might crack us back, and we're here today with the good-looking guy who makes those videos in his car, and he just goes off and off and off. We all know him. Jonathan Harvey, welcome to the show.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me in. Yeah, I'm the good-looking guy who talks in his car. Yeah. You added the good-looking part. I didn't. It's true, but you said it. I'm just agreeing with you.
Literally everyone I say, I go, guys, you know him. You've seen his videos before. That's what I say to them. So
that's very kind. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to come on our show.
Of course.
Start from the very beginning. I mean, you do a lot, and I want to know more about who you were growing up. Where did you grow up? Your parents, things like that.
Yeah, for sure. I grew up in a small town called Aurelia. Yeah, just about an hour and a half. It's it's a great summer town, great place to grow up. Super great childhood. Parents were amazing, very middle class upbringing. Grew up across from a golf course. I played sports my whole life. I was always running around. Like my babysitter was the golf course from the time I was like 7 years old. Baseball, school was easy enough for me. I didn't really care much for it, but I kind of went through it. And then as I got a little older, you kind of start finding your way. And then I kind of pinpointed probably by about 15, 16. I'm like, I'm a little different. There was just an entrepreneurial spirit to me. And also that the small town really wasn't going to work long term. One of the things I would advise, whenever I have kids or anybody's kids, get out of your hometown, move out of your hometown for a bit. And the reason I say that is because, there's these chapters in life, and up until you're 18, you're just learning to speak. You're just trying to figure yourself out. You know what I mean? What you're into, what you like, you make a lot of mistakes. You see a lot of really stupid things. You can be an asshole. You can be a bully. You can get bullied. But you build this identity within your community, right? And the challenge is as you grow beyond 18, early 20s, 25, 30, you start figuring yourself out. You become a lot more emotionally aware and just self-aware. And the problem is if you stay in your hometown your whole life, and this is obviously my opinion, if you stay in your hometown your whole life, you're still surrounded by people that put you in the box from when you were young. So you get to wear those bad decisions for the rest of your life. Maybe not for the rest of your life, but for a long time. And I think that hinders your personal growth. So I was kind of like, hey, small towns aren't really for me. So I moved down to the city when I was 18 to Toronto. And what I had said earlier about getting out of your hometown, I identified that over time. I just think it's an important piece of advice. So I just kind of wanted to share it. So I came down, I went to school at Humber. I went for a couple of years, didn't really love it. So I was like, kind of peace out on that. And then I just started running my own businesses. I had a couple jobs while I was sort of figuring it out. And then, me being an entrepreneur was just kind of very much woven into the fabric of who I am. I think entrepreneurship is one of those funny things where I think it's as obvious that you're an entrepreneur as it is if you're going to play in the NBA. So what I mean by that is if a guy's 7 feet tall and he's athletic, he's going to dunk. like your boy's getting drafted. That's what's happening, right? And I think entrepreneurship is the same. I think it's hardwiring. It's just that it's on the inside. So it maybe takes a little while to identify and you need some trial and error and stuff like that. But I truly feel that if you know it's for you and you know that's who you are, you're very much built for it. And I identified that at a relatively young age. So, school was fine, but I was like, hey, this, not for nothing, really wasn't very challenging for me. I didn't really like it. I never really had trouble with authority, but I was always like, this doesn't fit. This doesn't really comport with who I am and what I want to do. So by 21, I had my first failed business. I failed a lot growing up.
What kind of business was it?
So it was a clothing company.
Okay.
I knew nothing about the clothing business. It was very challenging. I didn't lose too much money though. It was just sort of a hit to my ego. Then again, I started another one. It was like so my wife's a musician. I'm with her for 17 years. She's amazing. So we met when I was 20 and we were doing, it's kind of like a music and media company. And so we were doing these live performance gigs, and then we did one at the Elmo Combo, right around Christmas for charity. And it was so cold, like it was like minus 20. Nobody came out to the show. So I lost my first like $5,000 and I was like, fuck, that was devastating. But it was only discouraging for like a month or two, then you just kind of keep going and going. And while I was trying to, live the dream, I always worked in restaurants. So over the next couple of years, I tripped and fell a few more times. And then what happened was, it was interesting. My, what I was doing to pay the bills just sort of naturally progressed into me owning restaurants. So I had my first restaurant when I was 26 in the Cayman Islands, actually. That was a buzz. I can't wait.
What kind of restaurant?
It's called Aqua Beach. Okay. It was like, it was just sort of kind of like your pub style, whatever. But it was in Cayman Islands. So it was a vibe. It was like half of it was outside, half of it was inside.
Were you living there?
Yeah. My wife and I lived there for 3 years, 2011 to 2014.
That's dope, man. Sounds like a fun time.
It was amazing. And it was good. Like, we kind of got lucky with that unit because it sold quickly. Someone who was interested in the land and the building and the rest. So they wanted to kind of buy everything. So with the landlord, we kind of made a deal to get rid of it. And then we sort of invested into a few more units where we had a smaller share, but we learned a lot. And then when we moved back, I really sort of expanded my just sort of my portfolio of just what I was doing as an entrepreneur. And, it's funny when you're young and you're an entrepreneur, you fail everything. You just fail. It's just part of the process. Like
you fail to success.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
It paves your way, right?
And I think a lot of people are afraid of that. They're concerned at how they're going to feel, their ego, how they're going to look. Fuck off. Just do it. Like if you want to do it, if you're wired for it, like I said, you do it.
Failure is one of the key ingredients to success.
100%, dude. And it's humbling. It's humbling. It teaches you a lot about yourself. It just gives you a good set of tools to navigate your way through life, regardless of what you're failing at. So by the time we came back, I was about 29. And we just started buying and owning other restaurants. So I had, El Jefe, Nomads, Bonsai, a bunch of other places, Toronto. But I grew up doing construction. My father was a construction worker, had a couple guys that worked for him. And so we were building all of our own restaurants. So at the same time, we're like, hey, this company, we're building so many of them, we needed guys on staff. So we started taking other jobs and that kind of became its own branch, its own company. And then just to sort of complete that integration, everything needs to be marketed. Everything needs some sort of media. So we started doing our own social and building our own media channels for our own businesses. And that again kind of became its own thing. So we really had those three businesses that were sort of thriving for quite a while. And to be honest with you, I'm not even really sure. Like, I don't really love restaurants. I loved the idea of being an entrepreneur. And, people say do what you're passionate about. But I was young and you're trying to figure it out, right? So I'm not going to do any more restaurants. Fucking business these days. But the reason I say that is we just had so much momentum. It was just one restaurant after another. It was just building this, doing that. I was doing a million things all the time. Now, I'll be the first one to tell you, you can be okay at a lot of things, but you can't be great at any of them when you have too much on your plate. So that was one of the problems we had. And the other thing was, we just had so much momentum. We're just kind of, I don't know, imagine flowing down a river. You can only do so much. You're just kind of trying to avoid hitting any big rocks or, smashing into shore or whatever it is. So that was kind of our deal. We weren't really making decisions to necessarily build a life we wanted. We were just go, build. So when the pandemic hit, it was interesting because it gave us some time to step back and look at that. We're kind of like, hey, do we really want to keep building things? Do we really want to keep having clients? Do we really want to stay in the restaurant business? And obviously we got absolutely kneecapped through COVID. So for us, that was kind of okay, well, now's your chance to sort of reassess and see what you want. And the other thing too, not for nothing, like most people are great, but a lot of times when you have clients in construction or whatever else it is, or media, they're a pain in the ass.
Especially in construction.
Yeah.
Sure.
People don't understand it. It takes longer. They want to make change. Well, I just want to move this a foot. I'm like, that's going to be $15,000. They're like, fuck you. What do you mean, bro? I'm like, well, it's already built. I got to change everything else. Like it's obviously a weird example, but I mean, they don't seem to understand the ramifications of the decisions. They can be emotional. And a lot of people are really great, but the ones that work, it just sucks the life out of you.
Absolutely.
So
I think in any business, like even when you're running a restaurant where the margins are good, if you know what you're doing,
sure.
But at the same time, you get a few meals returned back to you. You're like, hey, why did I open today?
Yeah, you're right. On the slower days, that definitely that impacts you. But what I'll say to just sort of wrap that up and kind of get to where we are now is, we started pulling back because we weren't sure my wife and I, Megan, we started sort of going, okay, let's chart our life. Let's not just have momentum anymore. Let's kind of decide where we want to go and what we want to do. So it's like, do we want to stay in this country? We actually don't. So we're like, okay, what businesses do we want to be in? And do we want to be geographically fixed with those businesses? We don't. So it was just kind of, navigating that and looking at starting a family and all these things. So, the pandemic was really hard on us. We lost most of what we made over the last decade. So, a little bit, fuck you, Trudeau, honestly, because a lot of it was just bad management of our country and our economy. It just really was. If you look at it like objectively, that's just the facts. But the silver lining is that now we've got this plan for where we're going and what we're doing that we're really excited about and we're happy. And I don't know that we would have felt as good about things if this all didn't sort of fall apart. So I guess that's sort of the silver lining in it all,
There's opportunity in every crisis, right? And I know Big Pharma saw that, but
oh yeah,
there's opportunity for everybody.
They create the crisis and then provide you with the broken solution.
Right.
Thanks,
so
guys.
It's like, but the restaurant aspect of it is interesting to me because that's how we grew up. So I was at Chuck E. Cheese in the kitchen.
Nice.
I was 14 years old and I'm like, I got a job at Chuck E. Cheese. Give me the damn referee shirt. I want to be in the games, partly because I want to play a little bit of games myself, but that's the fun part of going to Chuck E. Cheese. If I want to work at a restaurant, I'll go somewhere else. So I was in the kitchen. And then when I was 16 years old, I worked at Johnny Rockets, which was like an old-fashioned diner in Montana.
I know it. Yeah, I know it.
It was right beside Outdoor World. Now there's a Tim Hortons. And I was cooking. And then when I turned 18, I served there. There was alcohol. There was beer. So I had to turn 18, get my smart serve.
Of course.
Point is, I loved cooking at some point. Like I was like, okay, I like the fact that I know how to cook. Would I ever open up a restaurant? I'd have to be the cook of my own restaurant. I'd have to be the top chef, right? Head chef. I don't want to do that. That's not a business I'd ever want to do. And yeah, you were in the restaurant business too. So we saw kind of like the opportunity that's there, but we saw all the negatives as well that came with it.
Right.
So kudos to you. Like, I think if you're going to be in that business, like scale, you're going to have
I
to
think that's the only way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the problem, like, here's what I'll say. If you're thinking about building a restaurant, first of all, don't do it. Don't do it. Not in this country. Second of all, if you're going to do it, you got to realize something. If you're not incredibly, incredibly passionate about it, and you don't want to be the guy running the front of house or running the back of house, that's not for you. You need to walk away, run. You need to run the other direction because restaurants nowadays are what I call a level 2 opportunity, right? So as entrepreneurs, we always look for level 10 opportunities. That's what we look for, right? High yield, good leverage. And restaurants at a point in time were a little further up the scale, but they have become a level 2 opportunity, and for a myriad of reasons. The margins have tightened up. The costs have gone way up. You have to pay your employees more, but also the consumer behavior's changed. People aren't out eating out as much anymore. They still drink. Like we've got a place called Nomads. At 10 p.m. every night, fucking jammed, right? But we don't get the food sales anymore because people have become accustomed through COVID, eating at home, sitting with the family, doing things that are actually important, which I can appreciate, but it actually affects these consumer trends.
Yeah.
So, and honestly, one of the things that's a little bit wonky is landlord rents. So because we went through a bull market for so long, what happens is rent just keeps climbing and climbing and climbing. So the price per square foot of restaurants right now is disproportionate to its value. So, you can go in and try to negotiate, but if they're looking at comps in the area, often you're going to get fucked. You know what I mean? It's not going to be the best deal for you. So my advice would be if anybody really didn't want to get into restaurants, sit tight for another year or two, look for the right opportunity in the right area because location matters more than anything. If you find something pops up, maybe jump on it. You'll get it for pennies on the dollar right now. But yeah, if you're not super passionate about it, go the other way because again, it's just the yield is just not there anymore.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you have to be there, like Matthew was saying, like as a business owner, you need to be physically present in that establishment because I don't know if you see this as much as we do, but you probably do. People don't care anymore. Like people, whenever you go to a restaurant, there's no customer service. There's no level of customer service that used to exist before the pandemic. I find a lot of people just don't care anymore. The workers don't give a shit. And it's just pretty much like, here's your food.
Yeah.
And they expect a
huge tip. You go to Starbucks and they ask you for a tip.
That's I got a problem with that.
Me too.
This is because we come from that experience, right? Of customer service.
So I had to earn my tips.
We have to earn it, right? And even though we served really good tables, the meals were pretty small, right? We were working at a keg or something like that.
Yeah.
Burger and fries, $16. How much are they really going to tip you? And yeah, man. So I really feel like for nowadays, you really, as the owner, need to be there and be presently engaging with people, and it's tough, man.
I think you're right. I think unless so, there's what I would say that is if you're buying corporate chains, if you're buying like a bunch of Tim Hortons, you're okay. You're buying a machine, right?
Sure.
And that's great. But if you're building your own place, yeah, you really do need to give it its heartbeat. That's the reality. Yeah. And also you get a lot of like, I can teach you a million ways to steal from a restaurant. I know them all. You know what I mean? Because I've had so many, I know what people do.
For real.
That's also something that happens. But like you said, to sort of like the customer service side of things, I don't know. I think it's partially a byproduct of how our politics are running our country, that there's a lot more entitlement with the youth or with some of the working class these days. There's a lot more of pay me more and I want to do less and fuck you. Yeah. And you're kind of like, wait, what? Like, it's gone the other way where it used to be like, one of the telltale signs is, we'll do interviews with people. And don't get me wrong, I have some amazing staff. And to your point about being there all the time, I've had such great staff for so long that I've got a few key people that I'm never there anymore.
Amazing.
But they've earned a small piece of what I have now. I've given it to them. They've earned it. They've been amazing. But otherwise, you do have to be there. But kind of back to the employee thing. When you were younger, I'm not sure how old you guys are. How old are you guys?
28.
31.
No, I'm 38. Fuck. Date myself.
No way, dude. You don't look 38.
Yeah. That's but
I'd put you at like 28. 28.
So that's
yeah.
Your eyes aren't so good, huh?
Not a day over 30.
So that's funny. Thank you, though. I really appreciate that. When you were younger, if you had an interview, you go to interview. Bottom line, you show up. Doesn't matter. You go. Now, 20% of people, about 20% of people show up for interviews. And the thing is, my sample size is about 200 interviews. So it's about that big. I'd say 25%. Like, people just don't show up. They don't care.
Really?
They don't. Yeah. And I'm not sure if it's, they don't want to do it. They don't have the social skills. They have too much anxiety. Like, I'm not sure what's happening, but
Something's happened.
Yeah, it's weird. And like a lot of the business owners, I'm very centered politically, but I feel like the liberal agenda in a lot of ways really tries to be like, hey, people with money are the problem. I'll tell you, I lost almost everything over the last 10 years. So don't tell me that I'm the problem. And I've employed 500 plus people. And I've worked at these places. You know what I mean? So I've done whatever I've done every job at these places. So to have that kind of added, but the thing is, this generation, a lot of them have that attitude. Like, oh, like you must drive a nice car and be rich and do whatever you want. Or like, are you fucked?
Or you screwed somebody to get it or whatever.
Yeah,
the old
yeah.
thing. But we were sitting with the mayor of Vaughan yesterday, and the employment issue came up. So we're like, where do these people go that were once working, are no longer working? Federal incentives have been cut off.
Yeah.
No one's getting CERB anymore. How are they paying for stuff? And he's like, we don't know.
Debt.
He's like, yeah, that's what I think.
I think that's the answer, man. There's
Like,
no other explanation.
I don't know exactly what it is. I know it varies. So someone can correct me on this or look it up later. But like, I think right now Canadians are spending about $1.70 for every dollar they earn.
Yep.
So if you look at it, you kind of go, oh, this country is just being driven into such a massive pile of debt that no one's going to recover from. Amazing. And I think, kind of to your point about sort of the workforce these days, when you start paying people to stay home, they get a taste of that life. It can be hard to be motivated. Like you said before we started the podcast, if you don't have a purpose, if you don't have a goal, if you're not trying to accomplish something, you are, between us, I'd say less of a man. That's how you feel. I don't care how people interpret that. I just mean that, between us sitting at this table,
Yeah, sure.
you feel that way because you feel like your life has no purpose. So as a guy, I would say I feel like less of a man. That's how I would feel.
Yes.
And, it's hard to be motivated. It's hard to get up and go. It's hard to be like, here's my strategy. Here's what I'm going to do now. Especially, when you get paid to sit on your ass for 2 years. All you're really trying to do is just sneak by. You kind of got used to that lifestyle. I don't think people are happy doing it.
No.
But I think they're into a bad pattern. They're into a bad set of habits.
For sure.
It's
a bad funk for sure. And I've seen it in people's lives. And I think they have that same, that mentality now, saying like, what's the point? Why am I going to go out and get a job and work? What is the point?
Yeah.
And I kind of get their perspective on it. I don't agree with it, but I kind of get it because they were used to it for 2 years.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And that's what COVID did.
It's like the video we dropped yesterday. I was just in my room after we did those interviews, and I'm like, hey, like, guys, we're pumped from these interviews. We just interviewed the mayor. We interviewed somebody else. And it's like, hey, you guys need to get off your ass and do something. I'm saying this in my story.
Yeah.
I'm like, just whatever it is. I don't care if you have to fold laundry. Like, go fold your laundry, organize your environment.
Yeah.
Just do something.
Yep.
It's going to be hard. Don't pay attention to negativity. Don't pay attention to what's going on around you. Just go for it.
Yeah.
And for us, and I'm sure for you too, it's this roller coaster of emotion every single day being an entrepreneur. But we're wired that way. Like, The
We
earliest,
feed off of it.
yeah, the earliest memories I had of that were like trading Pokemon cards and
Nice.
stuff.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And you learn. Like I still remember exact bad deals, like what card was traded for this card.
Yeah, yeah.
And I still say to myself, you're an idiot. Like, how did I get rid of a shiny Flareon for like a random Tangela that we always had? Like, what got in me?
Motivated.
But I still remember that. And I remember who I traded it to. But
You're
anyway,
a fucking nerd, by the way.
I'm telling you. But I remember seeing my parents who were teachers in Iraq in the Middle East.
Yeah.
I came here. None of their credentials were able to transfer over.
Yeah.
So they became entrepreneurs by necessity.
It's either that or something or super low level employment. And you're like, no, yeah, you can't. Yeah.
Yeah. So they had a restaurant that they shut down. They had a restaurant that was gonna shut down, and somebody randomly comes off the street, hands them a $25,000 check so they
Nice.
could leave.
Amazing.
And I was like, this.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even believe this.
I believe with God, but here he is.
Like this happened,
Yeah.
right? And so there's all these different things that we saw. We'd go to MVR cash and carry,
Yeah.
wholesalers.
Yeah.
They'd buy low, sell high, right? That was the whole, these concepts that we saw from them that obviously were ingrained in us.
Yeah.
But at some level, and even just watching my newborn son, at some level, there's a lot of genetics in play.
I think so.
We're wired.
Yep. I agree. Yeah.
You know,
I totally agree.
Because I was seeing him do some stuff the first week he was born that I'm like, you couldn't have learned that yet. There's no way you could have learned that yet. So there's some of it that's inherently in us. And when these young kids that I talk to now, they see us on the pod and whatever, they're like, the one common question that I get frequently asked is, how did you know what you wanted to do? And I told them, I go, guys, these were men that I was, young men. And I was like, guys, you just have to try a bunch of things.
Yep.
Just try it. Don't worry about it. Try it. What's the worst that could happen? Find your way. Find whatever that is.
Yeah. I mean, to that point, I think there's a couple things I touch on there. One is momentum breeds success. Bottom line. Once you have momentum, you will find success. That's certainly how that works. I think the other thing too is people spend too much time in their life looking for their one thing, my purpose. So your purpose is a moving target, right? It changes. Every chapter there's a new purpose. And I say it's easy because when you're 20 and you're chasing girls and you're trying to find out what you want to do with your life, or when you're 65 and you got grandkids, those are very different, right? So you can't be like, oh, I have this one purpose. This is what I'm going to do my whole life. No. Look, you find things that you're good at. You find things you love to do, and you just pick something in that target range, and you will find your way, And like you said, it's a very trial and error thing. But you look at things too. Look, do you understand the economy around it? Is it a growing economy? Is there good opportunity? Is there people that want what you're selling or want what you're doing? Is there a good space for you there? And so there's little things you can do that are very objective. But I think to your point, yeah, it's just like you got to get out and try and focus on things you're good at, focus on things you like to do. And that takes a bit of self-awareness. But if you don't have that, you're kind of fucked anyway. You know what I mean? So
And you're definitely screwed. But the problem is, I feel like they're not down to fail, because I feel like they've been babied a lot.
Yep, I agree.
With the old generation, and they've been babied and have been told, oh, the world loves you, everyone loves you. And then when they go out into the real world and like someone says something to them, I think they get shook. Yeah. I think they get like a culture shock, and they're just like, oh shoot, like mom, they told me this, but this is happening to me. What's going on? And they kind of withdraw, and they're like, you know what? I don't want to get that. I don't want people to be critical of me.
Yeah.
Right. And as a result, I don't really want to go try new things. I just want to kind of stay at home. Right. It kind of makes sense. They've been created in that shelter.
I agree.
And have been, sheltered in that way. And they feel like if I go out in the world, I'm going to get hurt, which is kind of shitty because you're never really going to experience life.
It's how you figure it out. I think the pandemic exacerbated that for sure.
For sure.
I think once you started with the No Child Left Behind and all the participation ribbons, that's when shit started.
Shit hit the fan for sure.
And then
We were just talking about that.
yeah, it's just the wrong way to do things, because that life is going to kick you in the balls. That's just what it's going to do, no matter what.
Yeah.
When things are going well, it's going to fall apart. And you find your way through bad times and go, wasn't as bad as I thought, But I also think social media made it really challenging because, I grew up, I remember when the internet started, like commercially, like I was like 13. So I grew up without any of that stuff. And social was, let's call it 2006, 2007. So I would have been 21, 22. So my whole life was just like, what is this thing? I already had my wife now, I was already with her at that time. Yeah. So like, I didn't even, all those others swipe this way or that way, if I was never a part of my life.
Yeah.
But what happens, I find online is you give people the highlight reel, right? Like, how many takes did you do of your video in the office? Maybe 1, maybe 5. I don't know. But you gave them the good one regardless, right? You felt good about it. So, social media is really just this highlight reel of who you are, right? And the challenge with that is you get likes, or you get, confirmation that this is such a great way to be. Oh my God, this person is something especially like people that have 1 million followers when they're 16, 17, like Are you kidding me? The amount of psychological problems they're going to have, you can't live up to this highlight reel. Yeah. So then you're afraid to be a part of the real world because it's not going to match who you think you are online. So this disparity creates more anxiety and more isolation. So you compound that with the pandemic, and then everybody gets a participation ribbon and whatever else they kind of threw in the mix there. And you're like, oh, I get why this generation is struggling. I understand. Yeah. Now, I think we are going to fix that with our kids for sure. I think we're going to say, hey, that experiment didn't work, but you're going to have this 20-year gap where people, I don't know, they're a little wonky, man. So it's
a bit wonky. I think one quick, I don't want to say a quick solution. I don't believe in that, but I think one way you could rewire, send all those kids to Cuba, but not to a resort. Send them off the resort. Show them how certain parts of the world live. Yeah. Because everyone who's screaming, I mean, Canada's been socialist a long time. Like whoever's screaming for that and more of that has not studied history. Does not know the repercussions.
They don't understand where it ends.
Yeah. And I'm a little bit more like open, I don't want to say open mind, but I'm outspoken about this because our parents left the country because they were persecuted. It was a totalitarian state, authoritative state, dictatorship. It didn't work. It's never worked. It always comes to that. Now, on the other end of the extreme, capitalistic society also fails. It's part of the process, right? So maybe there's a balance somewhere. Maybe there's, I always felt like there's a duty for those who have more to take care of the less fortunate, but not the ones that are taking advantage of the system.
Right, right. You believe in social responsibility, but also fiscal responsibility, because the reality is you need both sides to fuel. I would say probably in the last 5 to 7 years, I came to the realization I was very much a pull up your socks and shut up and get it done. That's it. Like, I don't care. Figure it out. Knowing that certain people had certain skills. Some people are going to be better with a hammer. Someone's better with a drill, for argument's sake. So I get that, but I'm also like, get the job done. And then as I got older, I kind of realized not everybody knows how to pull their socks up. Not everybody has the same set of tools. Not everybody's wired quite the same. And not only just, hey, you're better with this tool or that tool, maybe they can't use tools at all. So I really became a lot more like, hey, yeah, social responsibility is important. And we do need to provide programs for people that can't do these things for themselves. And I do think we need to try to provide a more equal version of opportunity for more like for everybody you can. And I think for the most part, Canada does a really good job providing equal opportunity for people. Now, the problem you get is when they want equal outcome, which is always impossible. You can't have it. It doesn't matter. It's never going to happen. I can't reach the top shelf. I can't. Little guy, 5'7", not going to happen. Got good hops, but still can't get up there.
Dude, Sarah, you saw how tall did you see? Yeah. She's taller than me, and she uses the top shelf, but it's not the top shelf to her.
Yeah, right. You're the dwarf. I get it. Yeah. So you're like,
Sarah, I can't reach these.
I need help with this, sweetheart. Yeah. So we're not going to get equal outcome. It's not going to happen because we are all inherently different. We all have different set of skills. Yeah. But the problem we have is kind of to your point is I don't understand why this happens. I wish there was an answer. Why don't we have a government or a political system that looks at everything issue by issue and is not so hardlined on everything? Because you look at our conservatives and you look at our liberals. I agree with a lot of them on a lot of different things. But how come no one's going, all right, well, I'm going to create a party that does that. I'm going to be socially responsible and fiscally responsible. And I know they both are to some degree, but you know what I mean? Just like on a macro scale. Why do we not look at things that way? Because every time we try to divide those two lines, it ends up being a disaster, no matter what. Like you said, if you go too far one way, you literally have Nazi Germany. If you go too far the other way, you have what happened in Russia in the 30s. You know what I mean? And there's how tens of millions of people died. Neither system works. So if we know, and we're relatively young, for people that should be, say, running the world, we already understand this. So why do we live in a political system that can't seem to provide a solution that actually works?
I think it's the whole divide and conquer thing, right? Because at the end of the day, if you keep people divided on whatever issue it is, then they're easier to control. Here you go, or you dangle something in front of them. You dangle the carrot in front of them, and they just keep walking towards it. The old analogy with the horse and the carrot. So it's I feel that, yes, we know that where we need to be with some stuff, just common sense. You don't need to be, one way or the other. You don't have to vote one way or the other to just have common sense. But it feels like maybe we took too much notes from our American, older brother, that politics have become so divided and every issue needs to be politicized, every single one. And it's it never used to be like that.
I agree.
Or was it like that and we just weren't aware of it at that time?
No, it's
I
hyper
don't think so.
politicized.
Yeah.
You know how you know for sure is because it used to be a faux pas to talk about politics at the dinner table.
True.
Now you can't go 15 feet without hearing someone talk about politics or being dragged into that conversation. And it's not just because of the things that I say online, it's just always there. Everyone feels comfortable with it now. It's become part of their identity. It used to just be like, oh, I don't know who you're going to vote for this year. Like, I don't fucking know. Then you just do whatever you want to do and you go on with your life. Now it's like, it's a badge, it's an identity. But if you think about it, in the divide and conquer side of things, that is an advantage for politicians, right? Because when you can hyper politicize everything, you can build a bigger government, right? Because now you need political influence or you need a political solution to everything, which we don't. It's crazy. I'm becoming more of a libertarian over the years because I'm realizing how ridiculous it is that we collect over $600 billion a year in taxes from Canadians, and we have and our debt's like what, 1.3 trillion right now, maybe a little more. There's no reason for it. It's all because of wasteful spending, big government. It's ridiculous. Like one program I know of in particular was they put my numbers might be slightly off. But I believe they added $300 million to the autism, whether it's research or support programs in Ontario. $300 million. I believe that's correct. Regardless of what the number is, it actually did nothing to solve the problem, and now the wait lists are even longer than they were before this new money was put in.
So where did that money go to? Like how
Right.
it was
It's-
mismanaged,
It's
right?
bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, if you think about it like this, you know these people that are career politicians. And I love to say, oh, that person's unqualified for the role. And I say that because it's a bit inflammatory and kind of funny. But then I think to myself sometimes, who is qualified to be a politician?
That's true.
You know, like you can get some education in it, but to be a good politician is to understand your people, your economy, whatever you're going to have your own little niche job, sure. But the reality is you need a lot of life experience and you need to understand both sides of the spectrum. You know, I think you do need to understand the balance between fiscal and social responsibility. Otherwise, how can you effectively apply these things? You know what I mean? Instead, what I find happens is, you know, this Parnell's ironclad law of bureaucracy, which basically states if an organization has bureaucracy, over time, that organization will no longer be able to accomplish its goal because the bureaucrats will overtake the people that were actually doing their job. And it always happens. And I just think that's where our political system's at. So people are just like, well, I'm a part of the mafia now. That's what I consider the government. You just keep adding more people to it and paying them more and putting more people on the sunshine list and spending more tax dollars for nothing. And you accomplish very, very little. And I think, unfortunately, that's where our system is at these days.
That's the way it is right now. Yeah.
For sure. And is that why you're trying to leave Canada, or
He's
not trying, but it's gladly?
Where are you going?
I'm gonna leave.
Where are you going?
Where are you heading to? Yeah.
So my wife and I are sort of going back and forth between Austin, Texas, and Grand Cayman, moving back to the Cayman Islands.
My first guess was Texas. I
Yeah.
have to tell you, I wish I said it before you said it. I don't know if you.
He
Texas.
always says Texas.
Yeah.
He goes, we should go to
You
Texas.
were talking about it, man.
Good bet these days.
It's crazy, man.
The reason we were thinking Texas, you hear a lot of people say this, but it's very much like this blueberry and a raspberry patch is what they say. So it being a red state, for some reason, that means you have freedom of speech. And a lot of things that kind of came up through the pandemic, a lot of people that weren't really pro-lockdown, weren't really pro-vax, weren't really pro a lot of these other things, it just became Republican or conservative, which is weird. Again, one of those things that shouldn't have been hyper-politicized, but was. They should have just been objective about it, but that's how it goes. So I also like that it's, the tax system in Texas is very reasonable. There's no state tax. So, if you pay your employee $100,000, they take home 80. So it's
good.
Cost of living is a lot better. But I just feel like Austin's become this hub for a lot of different subcultures. One of them obviously being entrepreneurship, one of them being tech, sort of the podcast, the jiu-jitsu, comedy, all these really great things. I could play golf year round, you know what I mean? And it's still this thriving metropolis because, at 38, I still feel like I've got another 10 to 12 years of being a really ambitious entrepreneur before I really kind of want to put it on the back burner. So that's kind of why we're leaning towards Austin. Now with Cayman, there's a little less inertia to move down there. We're very familiar because we lived there before. We know the climate, the people, and it is completely tax-free. So they've got non-disclosure, no double taxation, which are really great laws if you're, into like the corporate side of things. You can move down for less money. You can basically pay for your own permits. After, I think it's 8 to 10 years, you get a UK passport, which is great if you ever want to like leave Canada. And it's like a suburb of Miami. So how it kind of operates. It's only 45-minute flight from Miami as well. But we've also got a lot of really great friends down there. And I think that's a big part of it for us. It's interesting, when you leave home and you go to a small island, what you find is you've got one thing in common with everybody. They just did the same thing. So everybody feels like a family, which is really interesting. So no
Pretty
fights.
cool. I've never thought of it that way.
Yeah, I didn't either until we were down there. We're like, oh my God,
Yeah.
this is amazing.
That's dope.
Yeah.
Same thing.
So we have a lot of good lifelong friends down there. The other thing that's interesting too is, when you're in Toronto, there's this collective mindset of, I got to get mine. I'm not here to help you. Don't look at me on the sidewalk. Don't say hello. It's very cold. It's very scarcity driven. Very, very scarcity driven, right? But in the Cayman Islands, everyone there's got a ton of money for the most part. Obviously people are there working on permits and stuff like that. But it creates this abundance mindset because no one really wants for anything. So it's safe and everybody's happy and everybody has what they need. So everyone really gets along, and materialism doesn't really play a role. You could be sitting at the table with a billionaire and the premier, and just you could be a bartender, which we were for, while we were down there for a bit, kind of thing. And it's like, everyone mixes well,
And that's equality.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
It
equality.
was amazing, dude.
So it's funny that you say that because like the boys at Neighborhood, shout out to Money Buys Happiness podcast, check them out. We were talking about this, about Florida and specifically Miami.
Yeah.
And they were saying the mindset there is just completely different in the sense of, we go to somebody for a small business service that we want to provide to that small business. They are willing to sign no problem. When can you guys start?
Yeah.
Where he's like, it's so much more difficult in Toronto. Like everyone's trying to like hang on to the $500 or whatever it is. And I'm like, wow, that's true. See, in my business, I never looked at it that way. When people say, no, I don't want to buy real estate, especially these last 18 months, it's been extremely hard on us. But I always looked at it as, I can go anywhere and sell anything that I want. It's not about real estate. It's about the skills I've developed.
Exactly.
So what do I want to do? I want to double down on our YouTube channel. I want to double down on content creation. I want to find ways to become more valuable. That's the mindset that through personal development, like in my 20s, I was like, okay, develop this mindset. But you're right. I look around, like I hate it when I'm on the road, just, on a walk, and somebody crosses the street, like for fear of are they going to get sick, or I don't know, maybe I look rough. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. But whatever it is, it's like, Sarah goes, you're a chatterbox. She's like, you talk to everybody. I go, here are a couple of reasons why I talk to everybody that I see. Number one, I might be feeling down. That is a way for me to get picked back up.
I agree with that.
Number one. Number two, I talk to somebody because I don't know how they're feeling. Maybe there's something that they're going through that I could say one thing and it changes them and puts them in a better trajectory for their life. So it's funny that you said that about Cayman. Like, I think that's missing in our lives. I think we need to, like, we feel like we've been in such a rut, even though we're just pushing, but it seems like obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. It's like, I just want to go and not on a vacation, but just get a different kind of awareness from how some other people are living these days.
I think you get a different perspective when you go somewhere else. I think that helps.
And I think it's huge how, you don't pay tax there in the Cayman, because
It's huge.
a lot of people might think that's a big deal, but I feel like for us here in Canada, like you're working from January to like June for free.
Yes.
For the government. And I find that ridiculous. And when I first heard that, I really internalized it. I said, wow, that kind of is shitty, because it's not coming to you, it's going to the government. And then on top of all that, they're recklessly spending, which really pisses me off.
Yeah.
So it's like, if they were at least using the money for good, then you could kind of be like, it makes sense. Look at our sick ass infrastructure. We're one of the best in the world, but that's not what's happening.
No,
here,
we still have people living on the streets. We have people starving. We have all these other problems. We're like,
I'm higher interest rates, inflation, but let's send $500 million.
I was just going to say that.
To Ukraine.
So
like,
nothing
guys,
against
come
Ukraine.
on.
We actually gave money to Ukraine. We believe in that, helping others. But come on, guys.
What you mean we? Who gave them? We? Speak for yourself.
No, well, what are you talking about? Like the Toronto Real Estate Board, who we pay money
I know, you're
donated on behalf
by proxy.
of us. By proxy. So
I was forced.
But here's the thing, though. I find that ridiculous, because it's one of those things where, you're not really looking out for your own. You know what I mean? If we had a crazy infrastructure and we had a lot of people that, were in a better place, then yeah, I could be like, that's reasonable. You're spending a lot of money there. But what is the agenda behind that? Why are we sending $500 million to a country for a war that we're not really involved in?
And we're raising rates.
And then we're raising rates for our own people, and we're just increasing the taxes for us.
Yep.
It's crazy, man.
It seems like none of it's really for the people. And I think it's interesting. It kind of all loops together. Yeah. It's like, you're looking at the carbon tax increase happening in the next few days again. And you kind of go, okay, well, Canadians can't buy groceries, so they're going to make them pay more for carbon tax. Where does that money go? Does it actually solve the problem? Actually, no. Our carbon emissions on the global scale are such a small figure that it actually makes no impact. You're just hurting these families.
Yeah.
And it's little things like that, but nothing seems to be in the interest of Canadians. And this is why I think you get the scarcity mindset. You can't afford to live here. You can't afford to buy groceries. They've gone up 270% since Trudeau got into power, when they target inflation at 2%, which is stupid on its own. That's stupid to do that. But they do target it at 2%. So compounded, it would be about 17, 18% over his term. It's up 270%. None of these things make sense. That's just one thing. You go across the entire spectrum of the CPI, and pretty much you're going to find the same thing. None of it really tracks. And what I think has happened here is people are like, I can't make enough money to live. I can't support myself here, but I can't get out. So what does that do to your mindset when you figure that out?
It's true. You want to hold on tight to your money.
And also, why am I going to put the effort?
Exactly.
Why am I going to put the effort? Why am I going to
Yes.
why am I going to kill myself to do this and spend this
Yes.
if I can go here and do that? Or that's me, or the other way is when I could just sit at home
Yes.
and collect a paycheck.
Yes. And that's why everything we're talking about, it does kind of all fit together in this sort of terrible looking puzzle that they've sort of, I don't know, like I don't really understand why Canada became the way it was right now. If you look at the media, they say how great we are and how we're such a role model country, and it's like, but we're not, because for the people, like this is not a great way to live. And people like you or I, we might be able to earn enough money as entrepreneurs that we can get ourselves outside of this. But again, it goes back to the wiring. If 90% of people aren't wired this way, and let's call it, even half of those people, so 45% of the population doesn't have the necessary skill set to make enough money to be able to afford to live here anymore, what happens to their entire life? You can't get out and you can't afford to live here. So you basically become a slave of the country.
Yeah.
And I think people are waking up to that because of things that are right in their face. I think that this was a problem for a long time, but I think it was under the radar. And now I think that people are like, I can't afford to buy groceries.
Yeah.
I can't afford to pay these bills. And it's so obvious that now a lot more people, like that 45% is growing more and more, and people are becoming more and more aware of it. And it's souring the mindset, it's souring the people, it's souring a lot of relationships. You take the political divide, you take it all, you take all that, you put it on a plate, that's why I'm leaving Canada. Yeah. That's why.
And just to jump in, also, there's zero accountability these days. So when we would see, let's say, Dalton McGuinty do something or Wynn do something, right? And the easy way out was, we're going to step down. We're stepping down. Basically, they're getting fired,
yes.
But they're stepping down. And, there's no investigation or there's nothing like that, which, I think is a problem too. Like, there should be a lot accountability on all levels. No one's above the law, but
I agree.
Anyways, that's another story.
Yeah.
But that used to happen. It feels as though, I don't know how long Buddy's been in power. I think 12 years.
Who, Trudeau? 8 years.
8 years?
Yeah.
So it feels as though no matter which way he turns, no matter what thing that he does wrong, there's zero accountability.
Well, he's Teflon Don, dude. That's what I started calling the guy. I'm like, he's impediment. You can't do anything to get him anymore. He's built this. Someone was saying, I forget who it was, politicians these days are so well insulated. It doesn't really matter what you do. They can continue to survive. They've got the media channels. They've got all these weapons that they need at their disposal to spin a story, do this, do that, make something inflammatory. And because everything is so hyper-politicized, these lines are so defined that if someone on your team screams this, that's the truth, and that's what you have to support, and that's the end of it.
Exactly.
And it makes them, it insulates them even more. And I think that's why we are where we are. I mean, if this were any other era or any other prime minister, he would have been gone ages ago.
Long time ago.
The SNC thing would have done him in. That would have been it. There's a 2018. What are we talking about?
Or even, for example, as something as simple, but I don't want to diminish. I don't want to call it simple, but I'll call it simple just for lack of a better phrase. If a politician says you have to wear masks, and then you see them not wearing a mask somewhere, it's like, well, what? You're not holding yourself to that same standard that you want the people who are supposed to vote for you, that you're in charge of. You're supposed to be their shepherd, basically. You don't want to adhere to that same standard. So if you were caught on, let's say, a video or photo, you were photographed, that's enough for at least an apology, like a public apology, but also potentially okay, step down, depending on how serious it was.
Yeah.
Right. So there just seems to be so many things and so much blatant hypocrisy. And a lot of it, I think of when I'm saying this, American politics. Like, I feel like we absorb a lot of American politics.
Yeah,
But it's happening here too.
I agree. I think it's interesting. I mean, I think it's kind of funny. I think Trump changed the political landscape in the Western world in a big way. And they've made jousting such a big part of our politics now, right? So if you watch like Pierre Poilievre and you watch Trudeau in the House these days, they just go at each other.
Yes,
Yeah. I mean, Poilievre usually tears him apart, but at the same time, like, it's useless politics. Like, what are we doing? You guys aren't accomplishing anything here. No. Like, stick to what needs to be accomplished. And, but I feel like the Speaker of the House also should like grow a pair of balls and do something about it. But anyway, to your point, yeah, I think Trump kind of ushered in a new era of politics that is a lot more rhetoric, not for nothing. Like, I tend to agree a little more with the Republican side of things and the conservative side of things these days, just because, quite honestly, like, fiscal responsibility has always been there for me, but they chose, this is so weird, but they chose freedom. That like freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom from a lot of these lockdowns, freedom from having to wear masks. That's what resonates with me a lot. I'm not a huge fan of Trump. I'm definitely not a fan of Biden. But it was interesting when he came in, it really did change sort of the landscape, and it made it like they can just kind of squawk at each other and not do anything. It almost made their jobs easier in a sense. You know what I mean?
It was basically entertainment at that point.
That's what I think it's kind of become. Yes. And my big question, and maybe you guys can take a stab at this, is how does the empire fall, right? So back in, I don't know.
Rome.
Yeah, sure. Hey, you want the empire to fall? Cut that guy's head off. And everyone else that works for him, job done. We don't do that anymore for good reason. I'm okay with that. But how do you actually make the empire fall when it's time? Because it's become too big. It's lethargic. Cornell's ironclad law bureaucracy. They don't accomplish anything. They're not doing it for the people. There seems to be some other agenda these days that doesn't add up. They're bankrupting our country. Like, you pick whatever you want. You know what I mean? There's a myriad of things. So when that happens, you kind of go, oh, we need to shake things up. But how do you do it? What do you do?
I feel like it's going to come down to an event. And I think the more left we go, it's going to reach a point just like a pendulum where it's going to swing back and go all the way right. And I don't think necessarily that's going to solve our problems. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, when I think the Conservative Party will, take over leadership again. But again, the problems that are, rotting our country right now are very foundational. And I don't know what's going to happen, man. That's why we're talking about moving to Texas. Yeah, right. It's crazy, man. And you talk about all these different factors, that are playing a role in people's lives and affordability and not being able to afford groceries, let alone housing. Yeah. We don't even get into that conversation.
That's not even people growing up.
That's not even an option, for people growing up right now. Like, you need to have an income of about $250,000 annually to qualify for a mortgage of $1 million. Yeah. And who's really making $250,000,
And what can you get for $1 million?
You can't even get an average house in Toronto.
That's so sad.
So
that's crazy.
I want to get into that, but just full disclaimer, like, for those of you guys listening or watching, like, I didn't vote in the last election. Like, I just felt that there was no good choice for me. I didn't vote. I exercised my right that way.
I voted against. That's what I did intentionally. Okay. I was like, oh, this guy, I don't like him, but this is what makes sense right now. So I had to vote against Trudeau.
Right. So that, like, to answer that question that you're asking, I don't think there's an answer, but I feel like a lot of people are scared to say that revolution is the answer. I feel like a lot of people don't want to face that reality. Like, people just want things to be fine. Nobody wants to change how things are. Like, nobody likes change.
They don't want to do anything about it. They don't like where it's at, but they don't want to do anything about it. I think that's the big difference.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's like, okay, but revolution, but let's say, how do you create a revolution in modern times?
Right.
Right? Because you're not going to just march down the streets with your guns.
Going back to what you were saying about
it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Number one, they've taken a lot of them away.
Yeah, Canada.
Right? Number one.
Not an option here.
But even if you want to consider yourself a civilized society,
sure,
where we can talk about it or debate it or whatever, how do you do that with censorship? How do you do that with
when they control the media?
The agenda.
Yeah.
Right? How do you do that with media that is privately controlled by? I could buy the Toronto Star if I could afford it and they were up for sale. A company like Millennial's Choice can buy it. We could put out whatever messaging we want, right? How do you have free speech there? So you don't. So I don't know what that looks like. The answer to that, I just think that at some point, somehow, because people are looking for this savior. We know that. There is going to be, biblical prophecy even talks about that. People are going to be looking for this savior. And maybe what does that look like in modern age? Maybe it does look like somebody who comes up with the answers that are common sense for the most part. And everyone's like, yeah, that's the guy. That's the guy. And we don't know what that turns into. Maybe we give up some more freedoms because we feel that he's saying the right things.
Right.
Right. I don't know what that looks like, and ultimately ends in something worse. We could go down that rabbit hole, but I don't know if there's any way to really solve it, because even when you look at someone like Pierre, I don't see him as the prime minister.
I think he will be, but I also think he's still not going to do the right. Like I think he's got a lot of good ideas, but I still think he's too big government. I think that's going to be a challenge.
I feel like there's maybe he's the guy you send as like, you want to buy this building. You're not going to get this building. It's not for sale. The guys that own it are not selling it, but he's the bulldog that you send in. And then there's someone behind him. Someone is there that's going to present themselves as the right person. Obviously, it's probably going to be him who's running, but yeah. I feel like there's something else there. Personally, I don't know. But when I'm listening to everything he's saying with Trudeau, yeah, it's funny. Okay, yeah, it's true. Okay, yeah, oh, you reposted or whatever. But it's like, it's not, I'm not seeing a solution, though.
Yeah.
How do you solve the house?
How are you? How are you
solving these things?
So far, it's easy.
Oriented, yeah.
So far, it's like, yeah, Trudeau, you talk about helping Canadians, but you spent $61K to go to New York.
Yeah.
Okay, but he's a prime minister. They've been doing that all the whole time, right? Since the beginning of time.
Yeah, it's like I think you're right though. It's like pointing out hypocrisy or pointing out like his bad spending habits. It's kind of funny. I agree with it, but still doesn't solve the problem, like the foundation of the issues we have. What are we doing? I think he's got the right idea. I'm concerned about his process of implementation. And again, that kind of goes back to big government, bureaucratic, moves slow, doesn't accomplish anything. So you can have all the right ideas, and then you're just jammed from day one, accomplishing very little. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's an interesting thought experiment, because, I mean, I personally think it's going to be 10 years until like it's great to live in Canada again. You know, I could be off by a lot, but that's just kind of how I feel. And don't get me wrong, like people are like, oh, well, you got it great, you live in Canada. I know we have it good. I know things are very reasonable here, you know.
We don't have to worry about bombs, dropping in front of us. Like,
no, we have food, traffic wasn't too bad. Like that's
water's clean.
Yeah, like
as far as we know.
Yeah, well, ours is anyway, not unfortunately. So we have it good, but that doesn't mean that the grass can't be greener somewhere else. And I think people forget. They're like, oh, be grateful for what you have. I'm like, what, that the whole country's got a mountain of debt, no one can afford to live here, no one can buy a home, no one can buy groceries, people are fucking miserable all the time? Why would I be happy about that? When you can go to a place like Austin or Cayman where everyone's happy, there's an abundance of opportunity. You can pay your employees and they can have a better like quality of life and keep more of their money and all these other things. And look, I'm sure there are downsides there too, for sure. But when you look at the things that matter to you, they're a lot better in other places right now. And then as entrepreneurs, we kind of go, hey, like our game plan has got to be in a place like you think 10 to 12 years, and you want to be in a place that is pro-entrepreneur. You want to be in a place where you can, really try to have one of those 10x opportunities that makes you something special, where you do, like a 9-figure exit on a business. Like, that's what you want. Everybody wants to, every entrepreneur wants to sell a $100 million business. Every one of them.
Absolutely. That's what we're doing this for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If not, otherwise they're lying to you.
Why are we doing this?
Right.
Yeah.
But the thing is does that opportunity exist here in Canada? And to be honest with you, unless you're already plugged in politically and if you don't have family money, if you're not plugged in politically, I mean, the only way to really do it is you kind of have to do it through real estate. And even that's a bit of a crapshoot.
Oh gosh. Listen, I started at 19. I bought my first pre-con condo, pre-construction. My parents, all they had was their house, us, the car.
Yeah.
And they tried multiple business till they landed one convenience store about 400 square feet under an apartment building, surrounded by apartment buildings in Rexdale.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Across from Mount Olive Hood. Okay. Big time.
I didn't grow up. Sorry. I lived there. I lived in Rexdale at Finch and 27 for a couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah. So a little bit north of that, like south of Kipling and Steeles on Kipling. That's where the store was. They just sold it last year after 25 years.
Nice.
And they're not retired. They're still working. That's sad. My parents are the real pioneers that had to actually flee and escape and come here as refugees, not political refugees. Like they were actually like being slaughtered.
Yeah.
So we don't have those types of problems, and I'm super grateful for that.
100%.
But I want to be able to, if I'm putting in the work, if I'm putting in the effort, if I'm doing the right things, if I'm serving others, if I'm becoming valuable, I want to reap the benefits of that. So if I feel that, to that note, like point about real estate, where I have a small portfolio, we're building, we got some good stuff, I got the house, we're paying for it, we got a mortgage, but I feel like I'm not getting ahead. I could only imagine what people that are not in that position are still living at home, are working a job that's paying them 40, 50K are feeling. I could only imagine, because I'm pushing or doing or have this opportunity that I've created over the last 11 years.
Right.
And I still feel that. And yesterday we're sitting with somebody who their family assets combined are definitely in the billions. Okay. And he's saying the same thing. So I told him, I said off air, I go, I got to talk to you off air. I go, your community is a powerful community. You probably have an idea of what community he's a part of. I go, how do you guys deal with this stuff? He's like, what did he say? He's like, honestly, he's like pumping a lot of money behind the other guy. Like literally to try to change the pendulum. Like to shift, right? And I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
People with real money pay both sides because they want to be able to survive through whatever storm is coming.
Exactly.
I totally get it.
But everyday people, that's not the situation.
Not an option.
You know?
No.
And these guys that are coming here, that the immigrants, like part of the reason why, like this is a country founded on immigration, like
For sure. Yeah. Since World War II, that's how we built our GDP. Like, yeah, for sure.
We need the laborers.
Sure.
Like you guys, if you guys are young and you're listening to this, like someone else is coming to eat your food.
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to be able to buy it. Like someone is going to be coming here thinking they're going to have this like amazing life because it's safe and clean and all that stuff, but not realizing that they're going to be in the rat race for the rest of their lives.
Yeah. You're stepping into poverty. Yeah. We're selling them this false dream.
There's people literally that are coming from India. I don't know if you guys saw that video, and they're coming from India and they're like, we thought this was going to be better. Yeah. We're moving back home.
It's worse.
We don't like it here.
Yeah. It's
and
wild.
I was like, damn,
that's more and more of that.
Crazy.
At least if I'm going to be poor,
I'm
going to be poor, but have my freedom and mobility, and I can still eat and I could still whatever.
Yeah.
And I'll deal with the robber who's going to come try to rob me, right?
But again, it's also like it depends how I know it's such a weird thing, but it depends how you feel in your community too.
Yeah.
And I just don't feel like there's a lot of strength in the large cities, the communities in the large cities these days. You know what I mean? So, it's tough. It's tough. I mean, at the end of the day, I wish there was a quick solution. I wish that it was like, hey, we'll just swap parties or this or that. But the way that our media is kind of organized in Canada, I actually think that's a really big problem too, because we don't really, like, at least in the US, I'll give them credit. In the U.S., there's this kind of like political theory that I have, because they have a two-party system, they don't magnetize, they polarize. So if the left goes way left, the right goes, all right, we'll up you one, and they'll go way right. So, and they have like, the country's about split if you look at volume of voting. So they stick to their guns, right? And then, but in Canada, what we do is we're sort of we're a magnetized group of parties. So whoever's in power seems to sort of navigate the needle, which like how far left we are, how far right we are. But the other two parties can't be too far away or they're going to lose everybody on the fence. So like our conservatives are magnetized obviously to our liberals, and then below them are the NDP, if you're looking at it as a dial. So as the liberals become more and more kind of socialist, the NDP becomes a full socialist party, but the conservatives have kind of become like a traditional liberal party. That's kind of what happens. But the other thing that I noticed in the States are they have two very different sets of media. Right? Like again, and maybe this is to keep people divided, maybe it's not. I don't really know. But at least both sides have a voice. And there's a lot of places that you can get that information. In Canada, name a public right-wing news outlet that is not considered a pariah.
You can. The only one that comes to mind is this Toronto Sun, and it is considered that. Right?
Exactly. The only one that I would say leans sort of right is the National Post, and they're careful.
Yeah.
So we don't even have a voice for the other side. So if you think about all the media, they censor it obviously through the mainstream. Now they're trying to censor it through all the social media. They control all of this. It's like, how do you get away from the direction that the country's going? Like it's the most magnificent weapon to be able to use against a people, against a country, is that narrative, is understanding and how to control all media. And
look at North Korea, man.
Exactly.
Korea, it's crazy.
North Korea thinks they won the World Cup a few years ago.
Bro.
they beat Brazil, right?
They
thought they beat Brazil.
Oh, fuck, if they did, that's hilarious. I know that.
That's a fake story.
Yeah, that's what I said. I think it's great.
They thought they beat Brazil, bro.
I think a lot of people don't really realize that. I think, the news used to be the news. It used to be a little more objective, or at least we thought it was. Our parents would watch the news when we were young. And it's funny, like my dad, I consider him to be very intelligent, but he's caught up in this. Like, no, I heard it. Well, I check all the news sources, Jonathan. I'm like, yeah, tell me which ones. I'm like, cool, bro. They're all left-leaning. Here's some data. Where'd you get the data? The government. Oh, okay. Yeah. So it's. I think a lot of people here don't realize that everything we have from a media perspective skews really, really more and more left. We don't have a voice for the other side. So again, when you sort of consider like, how do we get out of this? How does this change? I actually think it has to be through the foundation of media. I think that's got to be a really big place that we start. Otherwise, you can't really start telling the real story. You can't start telling people really what's going on, and they can't really see the other side of things, which is really why I started doing all that stuff through the pandemic. You know, I was like, hey, I'm getting kneecapped. My businesses are losing tons of money. I shouldn't be locked down. And I'm like, and this is all nonsense. It was the third lockdown when I kind of went ape shit, you know? So it was just kind of that opened my eyes to be like, hey, you know, it's good that there's a rise in independent media. But what I've kind of identified as the only real way out of this, and I don't think it's a short-term solution, is for people to build more independent media channels, to build more centered views, to share your opinions, to actually do the research, not just scream rhetoric, understand what you're talking about. And if you care enough about the country and you want to see things go the right way, that's what I would suggest people do, because that's something everyone can do. You say we all feel powerless, right? And we do, to a sense, and especially when it comes to the financial side of things. But if you realize that you can share your voice on how you feel about things, and if you can back it up reasonably with data and information and be consistent and, you know, use whatever tools we still can. I mean, whether or not you have to use a VPN to override Trudeau's new rules. But building out these sort of media channels, you can do it with your phone. You can do it with a couple of your buddies. You can do it by doing reasonable research, because the data really is there. You know, they're not skewing. People skew data, but they're not hiding the information yet. And you know, I think that's one of the best ways that you're going to see this country sort of restore some balance. Because, like you said, you can't really cut anybody's head off. So
100%. Just on that note, I don't know if you've done like the thing where you try to search up France on Instagram, and it's just nice photos, things like that, and they censor the hell out of it. And on Facebook. But if you go on TikTok, you type in France, you see videos, raw footage of like the riots happening.
Right.
And it's like, why is there such a huge discrepancy between what you're seeing on TikTok and obviously Meta, right? And we know why, because of all the censorship,
of course,
right? And it's actually scary to know that there's other people, let's say, that are not on other media platforms that don't know what's happening in the world right now, and they just think, yeah, it's all rainbows and flowers and everything is good and going well and with everyone, but that's not really what's happening.
No.
Well, just my counter to that would be like, all right, but if that is the lie, like, doesn't that become the truth at some point?
No,
like
I don't think it does.
Well, I think
it becomes a fake, a false narrative that people are buying into for sure, but I don't think it makes it truth.
I think just to both points. Sure, part of France is nice and people are, you know, eating baguette and having fucking espressos and shit. Cool, man. You know, a little cheese. You know, that's happening, but there's also there's huge riots, and they're having all these social and cultural issues, and that's very real. The problem is the people that go out and vote, and the people that want things to change, and the people that aren't happy with the way things are, but they're part of this called the silent majority, they're only seeing the nice things, not the reality.
Exactly.
So you know, people, one of the things I got a lot of with the pandemic was people go, you made me feel like I wasn't crazy. Like that, they're like, you kept me sane for 2 years. I'm like, oh, that's amazing. Because I was saying what they were thinking, but they either couldn't find the information, couldn't find the words to say it, or didn't want to be ostracized. And I think that's a good example of why we need other media sources to show people the things that they're feeling and the things that they're thinking and all these things that are going on. Because if people, think about it this way, if you're struggling to put groceries on the table, you're not going to go tell your social circle you're feeling fucking broke and can't pay your mortgage. You feel like you're alone and you're just failing. But if people are explaining to you why this is happening and what's going on and what you can do to solve that problem, now you're a part of a bigger group. Now you want to see things change.
Yep.
Now you realize where the problem's coming from. And until we can do that, people are going to feel isolated. They're going to feel like the world is great otherwise, and that there's nothing they can do. And that's why I think it's so important that you take kind of like the microcosm of my pandemic talks, and then take that same idea and really the full spectrum of news and concepts and ideas, and people share that information and get that out there to show people, hey, you're not alone. Yeah, we know things are fucked up, but let's work together to try to find a solution. Otherwise, we just continue to hear this false broken narrative that everything's okay and you just kind of have to deal with your shitty life.
And I think that's the perfect segue for you to talk to us about what you're working on right now.
Yeah, I was just about to say,
right?
It kind of sounded blended.
Yeah, that was nice.
Yeah, so funny. It was interesting. I worked through kind of what I wanted to do next. My wife and I were sort of going back and forth, and we knew a couple other things that were, you know, e-com stuff to just sort of get us out of the country. But the one thing I am very passionate about is sort of this news strategy. So what I wanted to do, or what I'm doing, is I'm launching a platform called Blender. So it'll be like Blender News Media. And what it's going to be is it's going to be, bringing rational thinking, like then where the news meets rational thinking. That's the idea. And what it's going to be is true to the name blender. It's going to be kind of a blend between what you're hearing on the left, what you're hearing on the right, but what's really going on. And I'm going to try to do my best where it's like, hey, look, I'm always trying to tell you the truth. We may not always get it right, but this is our intention. Where you take the headlines here, you read the stories, you're like, okay, factually, this is what's actually happening. So that's kind of the overarching idea. And what we're going to do is it's going to be a daily newsletter. Then we are going to do a very, very consistent podcast where I'm just going to go on and rip on how I'm feeling about things that I'm seeing because I just enjoy that kind of stuff. And then a group of social channels. So it's going to live on every social channel that it needs to. And it'll just be an ongoing everyday, it'll be a full-blown news platform. And this is the first one that we're going to build, and it's going to be for our audience. What I mean by is our demographic is what I mean. It's because I know us really well. And then afterwards, maybe you build them for Gen X, Gen Z, stuff like that. But my plan is, I'm hoping to sort of become a leader in independent media. And what does that turn into over the next 10 years? I don't know. But I would like it to be a group or multiple media channels where I've got, anywhere from 5 to 7 million people that are sort of paying attention to what we're saying. And the reason I want that is so that when it comes time to get the right message out for the right person, no one can stop me. And that's why that's so important to me. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. It's needed. It's needed because you can't have, like we just said, okay, nobody's going to go revolt in the streets, but you want to talk about it, you want to have dialogue, and then you're censored, or it's all one way or one side. It shouldn't be one way to the right. Shouldn't be one way to the left.
I am an equal offender on both sides. I will go at both of them.
Someone called me a red Tory. I'm like, what does that mean? They're like, it's like someone who's a little bit more conservative, but is in the middle, like a liberal, the red. That's a liberal. I'm like, okay, cool. But it's like the idea of equality, orphans, elderly, widows, these are vulnerable people in society that we should be looking after.
Sure.
Right?
For sure.
But at the same time, the person that's collecting EI and working cash is manipulating the system. So I'm not saying get rid of EI. I'm saying let's find a way to close the loopholes.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
That's what I'm saying. And then obviously from a business perspective, don't interfere. Let people do their thing, succeed or fail. Either way.
The market will tell you.
Yeah.
You don't need to make my life any harder. It's already hard enough.
Literally.
That's we could go on and on for days, but it's I love what you're doing. I love what you're doing. I can't wait to see what it looks like.
I appreciate it.
Are you going to launch that in Texas or?
So it's interesting. I'm actually going to launch it from the headquarters of the company will probably be the Cayman Islands just for tax purposes. But how it's going to lay out is it's going to be about 50% US news. And this is just like your sort of daily expectation, but it'll alter based on what's going on in the world. 50% US, 25% Canadian, 25% world.
Cool.
I like that.
Yeah, so I've got a strong pull right now personally in Canada, so I want to make sure that, and I don't think they've got enough of a voice, enough people talking for them, so I want to do that. But the U.S. is where all the wild shit happens, man. It's just crazy. I could do a rant every day for 20 minutes on what's going on down there.
Unlimited content.
Yeah, but it also fuels what's happening in the Western world. And then I think it's important to be abreast of what's going on in the rest of the world. So that's kind of the approach. I'm going to cover all topics. Nothing's going to be off the table. And I'll try to give people sort of a holistic view of just kind of what's going on. And that's why I have the different outlets. The podcast will be a little more inflammatory and fun. The newsletter will be more like, hey, here's your 5 to 7 minute, here's what's going on in the world. And the socials will be more headlines and links out and stuff like that, very traditional, the way you're seeing that. And then over time, the websites will be built and the YouTube channels will probably be built. And then we'll probably be doing regular newscasts and stuff like that. But I'm just going to try to build it in a way that's easier to manage with a small team. And to your point, kind of, am I doing it in Texas? I want to wait until we have that fixed, until we make that decision on where we're going to build build this team out. And then over time, just continue to build out other channels and other platforms, and then just sort of see where it goes and what kind of influence we can have for the good people.
Awesome, man.
Sell it for $1 billion.
Probably. Actually, I don't want to sell it because someone's going to take it and manipulate it.
Keep it. Hold on.
If someone does offer me $1 billion, I'll have a real hard think about it.
Yeah.
Then you can buy all the other ones.
Yes.
So, I want to do this again.
Yeah.
We should
100%. Yeah.
For sure.
For sure.
Any words of wisdom you want to leave our audience with, especially the youth, especially the millennials or, the younger generations?
Yeah. No one else is going to do it for you. That's it. Mike's so easy.
Plain and simple, man.
Sorry, man. Get out and do it. Like you said, no one else is going to do it. No one's going to do your push-ups for you. You got to get out and do it. I just think in a small package, a succinct piece of information that kids are like you said earlier, you got to get out of the house. You got to get some momentum. You got to find your way. And you only get that by getting out there and trying things out and screwing things up and doing your own hard work. And you'll figure it out, because if you start today, you're going to be in a great place in a year from now. But if you sit around and wait for it to happen, you're going to be starting in a year. So just get up, get out, make it happen. And I think the other thing too is I don't think people realize how capable they are. You're a lot more capable than you think. And all you got to do is kind of get your hands dirty, and you'll figure that out pretty fast.
Love that. That was awesome.
And where can they connect with you?
Best place right now is on social. So just it's Jonathan Harvey on pretty much any platform. I'm a little quiet these days since I'm so fucking busy. But Instagram's probably the best one. I do have Twitter. It's John Harvey. I don't really use it. I'm going to use it a little more now that Elon's in charge. YouTube, same thing. I don't know. I'm just not doing much on those. Instagram's the best place. Instagram.
Awesome. And we'll put the links in the description. So yeah, Jonathan, thanks for coming.
Easy.
Thanks for the time.
Yeah, this was awesome.
Appreciate it. Great chats.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, and we'll have you again very soon. Hopefully.
Sounds good. All right.
Awesome, guys.
Bye, everybody.